spring.jpa.open-in-view equals true. In Spring Boot, explained. Open Session in View Pattern, Introduction. When using Spring Boot with Spring Data JPA and Hibernate, you may see this property. spring.jpa.open-in-view. Many developers are confused about what does it do? Why is it enabled by default? Should we disable it? What problems does it solve? This property is related to a concept called Open Session in View, OSIV. Understanding this is important for lazy loading behavior, transaction boundaries, performance tuning, avoiding common runtime errors. What does spring.jpa.open-in-view mean? This property controls whether the Hibernate session entity manager remains open during the entire web request. Simple meaning. Open-in-view equals keep database session open until the response is returned. Example concept request starts, transaction starts, controller executes, view rendering happens, session still open if enabled, response returned. What is open session in view? OSIV. OSIV is a pattern where database session is opened at the beginning of a request. Session remains open even after service layer completes. It is closed only after view response is rendered. OSIV equals keep DB connection open across controller plus view layer. Why this feature exists? In JPA, relationships are often lazy loaded. Example: user.getOrders. If the session is already closed, this will throw LazyInitializationException. OSIV prevents this by keeping the session open. Lazy loading problem without OSIV scenario. User equals user_service.getUser. Later in controller view, user.getOrders problem. If session is closed, LazyInitializationException. Why? Because Hibernate cannot fetch data without an active session. How OSIV solves this? With spring.jpa.open-in-view equals true. Session remains open. Lazy loading works even in controller view. Example concept. Lazy load means session open means works fine. Default value in Spring Boot. By default. Spring.jpa.open-in-view equals true. Spring Boot enables it automatically. Benefits of OSIV. 1. Prevents lazy initialization exception. You can access lazy loaded fields in controllers or views. 2. Simplifies development. No need to manually fetch all relationships. 3. Less boilerplate code. You don't need DTOs immediately. Example concept. Session open means easier data access. Problems with OSIV. Although convenient, OSIV has serious drawbacks. 1. Performance issues. Session stays open longer than needed. Example concept. Long request means long DB connection usage. 2. Hidden queries, N+1 problem. Lazy loading in view layer may trigger extra queries. Example. For order, user.getOrders, system.out.println, order.getItems. This may execute many SQL queries. Example concept. Hidden DB calls means performance degradation. 3. Mixing layers. Controller view layer starts accessing database indirectly. This breaks clean architecture. Controller means should not trigger DB queries for hard to debug. Queries may happen outside service layer, making debugging harder. When should you disable OSIV? In production applications, it is recommended to disable OSIV. Configuration spring.jpa.open-in-view equals false. Example concept. Disable OSIV means strict architecture, means better performance. What happens when OSIV is disabled? When disabled, session closes after service layer lazy loading outside transaction fails. Example error lazy initialization exception. How to fix lazy loading without OSIV. When OSIV is disabled, you must explicitly fetch required data. 1. Use fetch joins. Add query. Select U from user U, join fetch U orders. where UID equals ID. User find user with orders, long ID. 2. Use DTOs, public class user DTO, private string name, private list order DTO, orders. 3. Use eager fetch, carefully, that one-to-many fetch equals fetch type eager. Example concept. Explicit fetch means controlled queries. Recommended architecture with OSIV disabled. Controller means service, means repository, means DB. All DB operations happen inside service layer. Avoid controller means lazy load means DB call. Real-world example with OSIV enabled. User equals user service.getUser. Return user.getOrders. Works. With OSIV disabled, user equals user service.getUser. Return user.getOrders. Fails. Correct approach, user equals user service.getUser with orders. Example concept. Fetch data in service means safe and efficient. When should you keep OSIV enabled? You may keep it enabled for small projects during development when learning JPA. Example concept. Simple app means OSIV acceptable. When should you disable OSIV? Disable it. In production systems, for high-performance apps, when using microservices, when strict architecture is needed. Example concept. Production means OSIV usually disabled. Common mistakes ignoring OSIV behavior leads to unexpected DB queries. Disabling OSIV without fixing lazy loading causes runtime errors. Using eager everywhere leads to performance issues. Example concept. Wrong fix means bigger problem. Advantages of disabling OSIV. Advantages include better performance, controlled queries, clean architecture, easier debugging. Example concept. Explicit DB access means predictable behavior limitations. Challenges include more coding required, need to manage fetching manually, requires understanding JPA deeply. Example concept. More control means more responsibility. Concepts learned. What OpenSession-in-view is. How lazy loading works. Why LazyInitializationException happens. Pros and cons of OSIV. Best practices for production systems. Simple definition. Spring.jpa.open-in-view is true. A Spring Boot setting that keeps the Hibernate session open during the entire web request, allowing lazy loading in controllers and views. Final summary. The spring.jpa open-in-view property controls whether the Hibernate session remains open throughout the web request. When enabled, lazy loading works in controllers' views, development becomes easier. But it also introduces performance issues, hidden queries, architectural problems. For production systems, it is generally recommended to disable OSIV and explicitly fetch required data in the service layer. Understanding this property is essential for working with Spring Boot, JPA, and Hibernate efficiently.